Welcome to the Music Journal podcast, where we talk about the hottest things happening in music right now, and also how you can apply it if you're an aspiring producer or musician yourself. I'm your host, Wes Yee. I'm a producer, artist, and educator, and I'm stoked to be chatting with you. Let's make history. All right, welcome to the Music Journal podcast. Today I have here my friend Adam Walder, aka Quest, and it's kind of funny actually because Adam and I actually didn't even meet through anything music related. We actually met at the Orchard Bowl, which is a bowl that we both skate sometimes when it's raining because it's covered, and just when we feel like going. So it's pretty cool to meet Adam there. Adam's the founder of undergroundhiphop.com, which is this revolutionary underground hip hop forum. He was actually the first person to ever interview Eminem. And he's just an all-around amazing dude and cool guy, and I'm blessed to have him on the show right now. Adam, welcome.
Wes, what's up?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be on a podcast of somebody I'm a fan of. So,
thank you so much,
we're
man.
both fans of each other. It's pretty cool.
Dude, that means a lot. That really does.
I think your skating is insane and your music is great. So I'm happy to be a part of this. Do whatever I can to make your show the dopest podcast we can do.
Amazing. I've had a couple beers too, so I think
cool.
Fun,
well, then it'll flow real nice.
Fun episode. Hey man, so if you don't mind just telling the listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do or what you've done, that would be amazing.
My name is Adam. I was at Northeastern University when I started undergroundhiphop.com back in 1997. Where many of you listening probably were not even born yet or were little kids. But it was a pretty revolutionary website at the time. It was very early on internet. And, MP3 as a format didn't really even exist. And I started the website to promote myself as a DJ. And I grew it into pretty much an audio archive of a lot of new music, and then started recording a lot of old school hip hop music. And then, as Wes mentioned, I started doing videos and was lucky enough to interview Eminem really before the Slim Shady LP came out. And that certainly helped give a lot of credibility to the website. We added, we were getting a lot of traffic at that point and added our forums, which became infamous at last count. We had over 8.5 million posts with over 100,000 registered members. And as soon as we added our forums, our traffic doubled literally overnight. And that was because people would make a post and then come back multiple times throughout the day to see if anybody replied. So I recommend if you have the ability to add user-generated content like a forum or a chat room or a review section, because as somebody who ran a website, it was no additional work. Yet it increased our traffic tremendously.
Damn, that's crazy. So I didn't actually even know that you started to promote yourself as a DJ. What made you want to go from that to ultimately promoting other artists and kind of getting into the underground hip hop scene outside of your own?
Right. So the way it came about is I was doing a radio show in high school I was an intern at Rutgers University at its great radio show. It was every Monday night from 10 to midnight, and we had a really large following because we had about a 30-mile radius. So we had an audience in Staten Island, Central Jersey, even parts of Philly. And that was for about a year and a half. And then I graduated high school and went to college at Northeastern University here in Boston. And the radio station at Northeastern at the time had about a half a mile radius. And because I was a freshman, they gave me a time slot from 3 to 6 a.m., which was awful. So nobody was listening. I remember going to bed at 11 at night or so and having the alarm set at 2:30 in the morning to drag my two Technique 1200 turntables and a crate of records about a quarter mile away to the radio station for really no payout. Nobody was listening. Wow. So I around that time, a friend of mine who was going to college in California made a real basic webpage that just said, "Yo, Adam, what's up? Your friend Adam in California." And I remember seeing this webpage, and I didn't even own a computer at the time. And I just said, like, I have to learn how to do this because I can now reach an audience. Like, he's in California and I'm in Boston. I can do something similar. So I decided I need to learn how to create a webpage. So I learned how to do it using a webpage editor called, I think it was Microsoft Front Page at the time, a real it's almost like Microsoft Word, but you could create a web page. And I started to learn how to do some basic web page coding. And while I was learning how to do this and promoting myself as a DJ, it was like a thing of MySpace before MySpace. I was still getting a lot of free promotional records. We used to get physical records sent at the time to the radio. Not now, it's all digital. And I was getting all this music sent to me, but I had nothing I wasn't playing it on the radio because I wasn't doing the radio show anymore. I forgot to mention that the radio show, I quit after 10 shows, which is 10 weeks, because it just was not worth it. And I started to want to learn how to do this web thing. So I learned how to record all these records that I was getting sent to me onto a computer, and then ultimately being able to stream them to the web. And I was getting really unique underground hip hop music that people around the world had never heard. And so once I put it on the website, I think word spread, and like wildfire, I remember I added a tracker to the website where I could see where people were coming from.
Oh, cool.
And I was only used to having a local audience. So in New Jersey, I'd have a Jersey audience. When I was doing radio in Boston, it was just this local northeastern Boston. But I started seeing people from Germany and South Africa and Indonesia, or just even countries I didn't even know existed. And it was cool feeling, it was amazing. It was like, oh my gosh, I can do this web page on my own time, not 3 to 6 a.m., but really whenever I want to. And I have an audience that's mine. It's not shared with the radio station or even our co-host like I was doing with the radio, but it was me. And I became really addicted really quick. And I started dedicating 10 to 12 hours a day to build this audio archive of all this new music and my personal record collection onto the web.
That's amazing, dude. That's so awesome, I think. Would you recommend for anybody who's an aspiring artist or producer to be really passionate about what they do? Because you were saying that the DJing thing from 3 to 6 a.m. wasn't working. So after 10 weeks, you just decided to stop. Whereas I know a lot of artists who will try something and it won't work. And it's kind of like beating a dead horse, but they'll just keep trying this thing that's not working. Would you recommend for somebody who's doing that to kind of take a step back, reflect, and then potentially try something different?
I think you know what's right when it's happening. I was very lucky in the sense that I was really focused at that point in my life and really hungry for promoting this type of music that I love so much, that I didn't have the kind of growing pains that I see a lot of people have web stores maybe, or an artist or a producer have, where things just aren't working out. I think if you think you can do it, you should do it. I'm going to use you as an example. You're not the most popular artist in Boston.
Not yet.
But I think you could be.
Cool.
And,
thank you.
And I really do strongly believe in your music, and I've told you that on probably every time I see you. So, you might feel personally frustrated because you're not headlining a local club, but I think without me telling you that you have a talent. And if you're an artist or a producer who feels that they have a talent, continue to work on it, and you have nothing to lose, particularly if you're young, you're not married, you don't have kids, you don't have a house. If you don't have any of those things, to me, that's the best time to do anything that you dream of, because you have less responsibility. It's a lot harder as you get older, and you have to have a full-time job paying X amount of dollars in order to keep a roof over your family's head.
Yeah, and responsibilities and stuff like that.
I think I do see some artists when I go out, and I'm sure we all have, that are probably too old to be doing what they're doing. They're not good enough at what they're doing, and they maybe should be doing something else with their time. But to play devil's advocate, if they're having fun and enjoying it, then why not? Like you said in your first podcast, you only live once, and I like that about you, and I feel the same way, that I see a lot of friends as I'm getting older who they have careers that they don't necessarily enjoy, and lives that I think suffer because of that, because they don't realize that time is, and I'm sure we've all heard this, you know, time has no price to it. Like, you can't buy time.
Yeah,
so
definitely not.
If you have a dream of being a producer, fuck it, become a producer. Practice, do what you love to do. And if it becomes eventually a full-time job for you, you know, more power to you. That's amazing. But even if it's a hobby and you're just doing it for fun and you can do a little side hustle and get a couple $100 here and there, as long as you're enjoying what you're doing, whether it's a job or a hobby, that to me is priceless, and that's great.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, actually. You played kind of devil's advocate with yourself. I think I lean more towards the second half of it. I think any point you can do whatever you want, just in my personal opinion. I think it does get harder as you put more responsibilities on yourself. Like, if you decide to have a family and you're still not there yet and you're still pursuing it, then maybe you should have waited a little bit to have the family. But I think if you're young and hungry, that's definitely the time to take action and really do that. But at the same time, I think a lot of people are impatient and have to just realize that it takes a lot of time. Like, for example, with me and just being my own artist and putting out my own music, I've only been doing it for maybe 7-8 months now, and I've never heard of an artist only spending 7-8 months and making it that amount of time. So I think what a lot of people need to realize is that it just takes that time and that hustle, and then what happens is the universe kind of rewards you for that time you put in. Like, it didn't take you 7-8 months to build underground hip-hop, or maybe it did, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it does. It takes a lot of time and a lot of patience and a lot of focus. And I don't think everybody has that. And I, from my experience, I've been in the hip hop industry for over 20 years, and the top artists in the industry for my genre, which is underground hip hop. So I'm going to name some names that are staples: Atmosphere, Necro, Vinny Paz of Jedi Mind Tricks, Apathy, and the list goes on and on. Those are just ones off the top. Immortal Technique.
Yeah.
They're not just artists, they are focused businessmen. They're not just talented musicians. So if you're just a musician, the chances, I think, of you becoming successful are much less than people who are not only talented musicians, but are businessmen first and foremost. And I've noticed that, and it's something talked about within our offices when I was running underground hip hop, that, you know, the top guys are also top businessmen.
Yeah, I agree with that. What would you suggest to somebody who maybe doesn't have that entrepreneurial mindset to kind of do it for themselves? Would you recommend that they either hire somebody else or outsource the work, or would you recommend they just kind of
I think my top advice to an upcoming musician is to network. And I think I've become I'm a victim of it myself, where you are tired and there's a concert going on nearby. This is, you know, I realize the podcast is worldwide, but if you're in a city where there's a concert venue within a few miles and an artist is in the area that is going to draw somewhat of a crowd, go to the show, because at the show are not just fans, but other musicians. And where do you think you're going to meet potential collaborators? If you're a producer, where do you think the artists are? They're at the show.
Yeah.
If you're an artist, where do you think the producers are? They're at the show. Engineers, etc. We're all going to the show. But if you go to the show and don't network, meaning you don't put yourself out there and get to like politic with people, if there's a cipher, you're not going into the cipher. I'm not saying you have to rhyme in the cipher, but be a part of the cipher. If there's a, you know, you got to put yourself out there and network. And I think the best place to meet other people is to get out there. I realize that this generation is more, everyone's behind a keyboard, and, you know, you could just do it on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Craigslist or whatever. But I think physically getting out there and letting your personality shine is the way that word will spread about you as a musician or as a producer. Because you will meet, for example, if you're an artist, I meet a lot of artists who say, how do I get beats? How do I record? There's people like Wes who have a studio in their apartment. There's tons of them who have studios in their apartments and are looking for artists.
Yeah.
Right? Or vice versa. You know, you're a producer and you need an artist. They're at the show. You're going to find artists. So get out there, get your name known. And, you know, hopefully if you're good enough before you know it, you know, you'll be the one on the stage performing.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I think networking is the number one thing. Just I think with anything really, even if you have a job, which doesn't really apply to people listening to this, or if you're aspiring to kind of just have that regular 9 to 5, which sometimes I envy those people, but that's a whole nother topic for another thing. If you're satisfied with just having a regular 9 to 5, but where was I going with this? Networking is key, and I think there's a right way to do it, and I think there's a wrong way to do it. I've told you this story before, but our listeners haven't heard this story, so I'm just going to reiterate it. Sorry if it sounds redundant. But I was at a show somewhat recently, and a guy came up to me, and literally his opening line was, "Hey, man, you look familiar." And I was like, oh, like, I wonder where this guy knows me from, because I didn't think he looked familiar at all. But the more we started talking, the more in my head I was kind of like, oh, maybe he does look familiar. Now I feel like kind of a dick for not recognizing him. And he was like, yeah, like, I'm a rapper. Oh, you're a producer, yada yada. We start talking. He sends me his music video. 20 minutes later, I'm at the same show and I'm watching this guy, and he goes up to somebody maybe 5 feet away from me, and I hear him do the exact same thing. He goes up to this guy and just goes, "Hey, you look familiar," and then just does the exact same spiel. "Here's my music video, check it out." And I was like, this fucking guy didn't know who I was. He just saw me and came up to me and decided to just do that, and it turned out I was a producer. He's actually asked me for beats and stuff like that and mixing and mastering ever since. And you know what's crazy is because I remember that happening, I either subconsciously or consciously probably wouldn't work with him. Maybe if I believed in his music a little bit more, I would, but just too many red flags. So there's a right way to do it and a wrong way to do it. I personally think that the right way to do it is to provide value first instead of just kind of, lying. If you have something to offer somebody, then they really have no reason to not take it. And if you offer something that's too good to not take, then that's a connection right there. And then you just let your personality kind of
I think there's definitely different approaches, and I'm sure if you were to have a podcast with different successful producers or artists, they would all have a different story about how they became discovered. And I think your story is probably not the right way, but I think he could have just tweaked it a little bit and actually probably have had a much better success rate,
Yeah. Sometimes small tweaks will be the difference between you making it or breaking it. Speaking of stories, by the way, Adam's being really modest here. He's giving you guys a lot of really good value. Adam actually also had a retail store that even some of my friends growing up had gone to and bought stuff from, and it was a little bit before my time, so I vaguely remember the logo, and I'm sure I've seen the van driving around, but I don't think I've personally ever been there, but I could definitely be wrong too. But I know you had really famous artists coming in and out all the time. What's a crazy story you have about just an artist you've got to connect with?
There's a lot of different artists and stories that I could think of. I think the ones that stand out for me as a business owner was when artists would try to steal from the store. We had several of those. I'm not going to name artists, but literally artists in our back warehouse. You don't want to watch them because they're kind of there, or maybe they were an artist that tagged along with another artist, and these are well-known artists too. And watching them stuff a T-shirt down their pants, or take a CD or two, or try on a bunch of clothes and then try to walk out. I mean, there's numerous. Actually, the most theft we've caught has been of artists.
Really?
So, those are always interesting. We had some amazing in-stores. I think over the course of the 10 years the retail store existed, which was from June of 2005 till April of 2015, I think we had well over 200 in-stores. Everyone from, some names mentioned like Immortal Technique. We had Ghostface Killer there, Method Man, Jizza. Those are some of the Wu members.
Wow.
I mean, you name an artist, they probably have either been there as a shopper. Someone as big as like Aloe Black, who was on Stone's Throw and wasn't even well known as, Come Through or Consequence or Rhyme Fest or, there's just so many artists that have come through, and we've done Polaroids with them. But what was great about having the store was I spent a lot of time there, as most people do at their place of employment, as particularly if you own the business. And, it's a typical day, and, having a coworker or the front desk say, hey, don't forget at 6:00 Method Man's rolling through, or at 6:00, Cool Keith is going to be in the building. We're doing an in-store, or Moto Technique I mentioned, or name an artist. And these artists who I'm fans of, J. Rue the Damager is doing an in-store performance in my store, like basically where I work. It's pretty cool. I'd walk 20 feet and there's a full-blown concert going on in my office. So, it was pretty amazing. I mean, that was my favorite part of running UGG, and particularly with the store, was becoming friends with the artists I grew up on. There's no price you can put on that.
That's incredible. It's kind of worth a couple T-shirts that you have to sacrifice.
right, exactly. For the couple of lost items, I guess it was worth it in the end, for sure.
I lived in an apartment a few years ago when I was still in college, actually, and one of my roommates at the time, he invited a bunch of girls over or whatever, and these girls didn't need anything from our apartment, but I think just for the novelty, we were drinking or whatever, and we got drunk with these girls, and when they left, the next morning we realized a bunch of our pots and pans were missing, and it turns out those girls stole our pots and pans.
You never
definitely
know.
Didn't need them. It was definitely just for the novelty, or whatever.
You never know. Yeah.
So
that's funny.
That's crazy. I'm surprised to hear that artists were more common shoplifters than
I mean those are the ones that as when you run a business and really all the inventory is really your money, those are the kind of things that stand out.
I'd be bummed, man.
It's pretty
if one of your idols
it's nobody in particular that I was a super fan of, but definitely a little shocked. I think a lot of musicians feel like, hey, I'm doing an in-store concert and I'm not being paid, so I deserve some sort of a treat.
Oh, interesting.
But you could certainly just ask for it, and we'll be more than glad to give you the item at cost. But some people, I remember one artist had about $200 of product and told the front register guy, my credit card's in the car, I'll be right back. And my register person should have never let them leave with the product, and did.
Oh, man.
And the person left. Well, guess who I saw later that night at an event that we were hosting? That artist. And I approached this artist and said, yo, what's up? Like, you left without paying. And he tried to avoid me, and I just whispered to him. It was very loud where we were. I said, I know about 200 people here who are big fans of what I do. Please don't make me make an announcement over the loudspeaker about what you did. It's embarrassing. And he gave me his credit card, and I charged it.
Wow. It probably wasn't even that much money either.
It was about $200. I think it was more the principle of it. I was really, just shocked that he would try to pull that. But
yeah,
the artist was from nowhere near here and probably thought he'd never see us again. But he did the right thing and actually did pay for it.
Good. I'm glad. I probably shouldn't be.
Apparently, it's a misunderstanding according to him. But,
it's always a misunderstanding, isn't it? I have a somewhat similar story. I probably shouldn't say this person's name, but I'm going to anyways.
No, we could beep it out. Beep.
Okay, there's this artist. Let's call him Lil. You're a skateboarder. There used to be an indoor park in Shrewsbury called Subliminal. Did you know it at all?
I did not.
You didn't know? Okay, it was this in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts. This park called Subliminal. It was a really hot spot in the winter. All the locals went there. It was kind of the indoor park, and what was cool about it was that it was skater owned, so everybody knew the owner and everything. And it kind of wasn't talked about that much at the time, but everybody who rode for the park knew that this guy was kind of on his way to bankruptcy, and this guy was losing money every single year trying to keep this park afloat. And even he knew eventually he was just gonna file for bankruptcy, but he cared so much about the scene that he he kept the business alive for as long as he could. And one day, this undisclosed artist, we'll call him Lil, comes through. He's doing a show in Worcester, and he contacts this guy because he's kind of getting into the skateboard world. And he says, hey man, like, I'd love to come skate your park after hours. If you could just open it up for me, that would be awesome. I'll pay you and everything. And the guy hits him back. He says, yeah, that would be awesome. I'm really hurting right now. So yeah, I'll come midnight, 6 a.m. I'll open the park for you. And yeah, we'll skate. So Lo does his show, and that's exactly what happens. Lo meets him at the park, actually shows up with his whole team of bodyguards and entourage and everything. And this guy meets him there. It must have been like 1, 2 in the morning, and opens up the park. They skate together. He said this artist, his name is was super cool. They hung out, they talked. It was cool. And then when Lil done skating, he goes, same exact thing. He says, "Yeah, I got the money in the car. Just give me 2 seconds. I'll pay you." Guy goes, "Okay, awesome." Lil gets in the van, drives off. Wow, crazy, right? But kind of speaking about, I guess, Lil and I guess hip hop now, you were really involved with the underground scene. I'd love to kind of get your opinion on, I guess, modern hip hop, because it's a lot different than it was now. I feel like in your day, it was really based around lyricism, and I listen to even just the mixes now, and they're so much different. There's so much more focus on the lyrical content and the words that these artists are saying, as opposed to the instrumentals, whereas now in the forefront, you have all these amazing producers who are behind the scenes who are really creating these amazing songs, and then the artist kind of takes the backseat but just kind of rides the wave of the instrumental, if you will. So I'm kind of curious what your opinion about that is. Do you prefer the older style of hip hop, or do you like the newer style? Do you think that there's a happy medium, a middle ground? What's your opinion on that?
I just it's funny because we discussed this a little earlier before we recorded, and I'm not sure I agree with you that older hip hop, and for me, older hip hop, I consider like hip hop from the 90s. Maybe late 80s. That's kind of, I grew up hip hop really like my favorite era, which is I'd say a lot of people's favorite era of hip hop was like 92 to 95. I'd say is like for me my favorite years by far. It actually was the producer more than I've always the artists then to me rapped. Like they knew how to rhyme and they knew how to make a song, and I can't say for the popular artists that I hear today it's the same thing. I mean, minus the artists who have been around. I mean, of course, look, the Jay-Z's been around since the late 80s, so, I'm not counting him. I'm thinking more the newer artists, where I definitely do agree with your statement where it is really the beat and the artists take a back seat. But I've always been a beat head. If the beat wasn't good, I really didn't even like the song. My favorite artists over the right beats are my just like the best. But if you remove the good beat, I really don't even care to listen to that artist. And I'm going to give you a good example of the producer who will make any artist sound good, and that's DJ Premier. Pete Rock is pretty close too. But to me, the all-time best producer, as I would say probably 90% of the listeners out there who listen to hip-hop would agree, is DJ Premier is the best producer of all time. And I could rap over DJ Premier and it would be a good song. So a lot of my favorite artists over DJ Premier, it's magical. Once you remove DJ Premier and you put in just a blasé producer, even though they're great lyricists, it just doesn't have the same effect, and I actually don't even care to listen to it. So I've always been a beat head. So a lot of the hip hop that's coming out now, if the beat flows well, I'm still down to listen to it. But it is kind of when the artist who's doing the lyrics just doesn't have much substance, it certainly doesn't make for a great track.
All right, well, producers, you heard it here first. The instrumentals are incredibly important.
Very, very important.
Actually essential, and as a producer myself, I couldn't agree more. So this is about our time. I just had one more question. It's totally unrelated, but I ask it on every episode just because I think it's an interesting question, and I like the answers that I get. So if you had unlimited money, no strings attached, what would you do and why?
Ooh, it's interesting. I am 40 now. I'm almost 40. I almost said I am 40. And when I was in my 20s, I could probably come up with 100 things I would do with that money. And I don't know about why, but things I would do. And as I've gotten older, I'm more at peace with what I have. And money is certainly not the most important thing in my life. I like hanging out with people like yourself because I think you have a similar philosophy, although you're much younger than me. I kind of like the way you kind of live your life. Like,
thanks.
money is not the most important thing to you. I think enjoying life is the most important thing, and being creative and networking and doing things that make you enjoy waking up in the morning is much more important than money. And I don't think I would have ever continued in the hip hop industry if I thought it was all for the money, because I think, as most musicians know, money is great if it happens, but we're not doing it for money. We're doing it because we enjoy what we do, and it makes us excited to wake up each day. If I wanted money, I would have gotten into finance or into a different industry than music. So if I won the lottery, realistically, half of it would probably be donated to different causes, at least, depending on how big the lottery is. And I'd probably buy myself an exotic sports car, because that's always been my dream. I'd buy an Audi R8.
Yeah, dope.
And that's really all I want. And to be honest with you, what's funny is I just read a book called The 4-Hour Workweek and Tools of Titan, both by Tim Ferriss. And the main point of the 4-Hour Workweek is, we all think we need to work as hard as possible to save as much money as possible to retire, and then you'll enjoy this life. But really, all we really want is a vacation, and not stress about work. Maybe a toy here and there, but those things are all actually very attainable. For example, the Audi R8 I just mentioned is my dream car, and I think it would give me some happiness. That realistically, it wouldn't. But it's a $70,000 car right now, used. That's not that crazy. I mean, I don't think I'm there yet, but it's not $10 million, So if that's my dream and it's $70,000, it's not the craziest thing to I don't need to win the lottery for that. You know what I mean? I could probably figure out a way to make payments on it and I'd be broke, but it could happen. So, money to me is not as important as it used to be, and I'm much happier because of it.
It's funny. I think a lot of people, once they kind of hit that retirement point too. My parents are kind of in that boat. They're older than you are, but they're not retired yet. But I find that the older people I talk to who hit that, 55, whatever, when you can withdraw your 401k, I find a lot of them find once they're at that point, it's not really all it was cracked up to be. And they kind of wish that they spent that free time earlier and had more free time earlier.
Yeah, so I could probably go on. This could be a whole nother podcast, but because I'm really strong about this topic. But I don't believe in thinking about 5, 10, 20 years into the future. I actually really don't even think beyond even today. Maybe tomorrow is about as far as I think, and I'm so much less stressed because of it. I just enjoy the now, because I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. So I don't think about what can happen in 20 years with my savings account, that, whether I have money or not. And it probably happened. My mother passed away about a year ago, almost to the day. And she worked really hard. She was a single mother and worked her whole life to get to retirement, I guess. And a year before she was going to retire, she got diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, and she had to take a medical leave. And within 5 years, she passed away. And I kind of look at her life because I can see it from a different perspective than she. She was living it. I'm seeing it from the outside, and I see how hard she worked to have kind of a 401k and her savings. And I don't really think, she didn't really enjoy living at the moment. And before you knew it, it was too late. She got sick and died.
Jeez.
And it happens to so many people.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you ask around, people could say oh, that happened to my mother, that happened to my father. And so I'd much rather enjoy life now and take little mini vacations, which they also stress in this book that I mentioned. Sorry, not mini vacations, mini retirements, where, right now, I haven't worked in the past 3 or 4 months, and I'll probably go back to work very soon, but I'm enjoying this time. And, just most people I know would never even attempt to do something like this, but I'm enjoying just not killing myself with work and enjoying spending time with my family and my kids. And it's priceless. You can't put a price on that. And I want to do this again, maybe in a couple of years also, where I could take a break and just enjoy life now while I'm healthy.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the only things you're going to really remember are those times enjoyed, right?
Yeah, again, what would you do if you won the lottery or you had unlimited funds? Yesterday, my kids had a half day and the Red Sox were having an afternoon game. And I said, and my kids are 9 and 7 right now. And I said, do you guys want to go to a Red Sox game? And they said, sure. Middle of the day, everyone's at work. I'm at a Red Sox game with my kids. I mean, that to me is, you can't put a price on that. Like, I'd much rather do something like that than have, a super fancy car or giant house. Those are the kind of things to me that are worth way more money than having a physical asset.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. I think you kind of nailed it. And we could totally talk about this all day if we wanted to.
Next podcast.
Next podcast, definitely. But you heard it from Adam, and I think he nailed it. And hey, Adam, if you want to share something with the listeners, do you have a podcast on the way or anything you want to?
I've been trying, and I can't believe Wes beat me to it. I thought I would be before Wes with the podcast, and I hope that I have the energy and ambition like Wes, and this is why I like hanging out with Wes, because Wes drives me to want to do better, whether it's in the arts or skateboarding or podcasting. I'm kind of an inspiration, and I like hanging out with him. With you, excuse me, edit. I like hanging out with you because of that.
Likewise, man. And don't sell yourself short either, man. You started an amazing business that
thank you
really did amazing things. I'll tell you what, when you start your podcast, when/if, we'll lean more towards when. I'll put it in the show notes here so that listeners who come back and listen to this episode can find it.
Yeah, hey, if you want me to do a podcast, if you like this podcast, feel free to leave some comments, and maybe the more comments that I read, I'll get some ambition to do it.
Dope. He's going to do it. Adam, thank you for being on my show today.
Wes, keep doing what you do, man. I look forward to seeing your career blossom.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of The Music Journal. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got a lot out of it. If you want to know more about me and what I do, I just put out a personal EP on Spotify. You can go to bit.ly/Wes Yee Spotify. And if you want to know more about music production, I teach an online course about it too. Just shoot an email to wes@homestudiohits.com and I'll send you an application. Just for filling out the application, I'll send you a free sample pack of sounds I use to make the instrumental you're listening to and more. All these links will be available in the show notes, so you can check them out there. And while you're there, if you feel inclined to rate this show 5 stars, that would really help me out. Other than that, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Thanks again. Peace.